Welcome back to the channel, everyone. If you love captivating stories about men transforming into women in unique and fascinating ways, then be sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Now, let's jump right into today's tale.
Kristin had fully intended to keep the meeting professional. By one. She really had. In fact, as the presentation began, she'd silently repeated a mantra in her head with each slide. Focus on business. Focus on business. Do not stare at his mouth when he speaks. Her carefully prepared pitch about Thompson Design's vision for Quantum Innovation's new headquarters started smoothly enough. The words flowed naturally, her expertise on display as she outlined their approach to the project. What we're proposing, she explained, gesturing to the sleek 3D rendering on the screen, is a space that balances innovation with timelessness. Something that speaks to Quantum's forward-thinking approach while maintaining a sense of grounded authority. But that plan fell apart quickly. It started harmlessly enough. Daniel asked insightful questions about the company's design philosophy, and Kristin, relying on her uncanny new instincts, gave smooth, confident answers. Your use of natural materials is interesting, Daniel noted, leaning forward slightly as he studied the concept images. Most tech companies go for the sterile, ultra-modern aesthetic. That's precisely why we're suggesting a different direction, Kristin replied, surprised by how easily the explanation came to her. Everyone in your industry is doing the same thing. Open concept. Glass everywhere. Minimalist to the point of being clinical. It creates a sea of sameness. We believe Quantum deserves to stand apart. Daniel nodded thoughtfully, those piercing blue eyes focused intently on her face. Go on. By incorporating elements like sustainable timber, living walls, and natural stone, we create an environment that feels organic and human, while still maintaining the cutting-edge sophistication your brand requires. She continued, warming to her subject. Studies show these environments actually enhance creativity and productivity. Your employees aren't robots. Why should they work in an environment that feels like it was designed for machines? A valid point, Daniel conceded with that small half-smile that was becoming increasingly distracting. Though I have to ask, isn't there a risk of the space feeling too rustic? Not at all, Kristin countered confidently, reaching for a material sample board. Look at these finishes. The timber is treated with a process that preserves the natural grain while giving it an almost metallic sheen. The stone is polished to a mirror finish. These aren't your grandfather's natural materials, Mr. Carter. Tartar Darsai. Daniel. Please, he corrected, his eyes meeting hers with a directness that sent another jolt through her system. If we're going to be creating something together, I think we can dispense with formalities. And that's when the flirting began. At first, it was subtle. A small smirk here. A slightly lowered voice there. The way Daniel's eyes lingered just a second too long when she spoke, the way he leaned forward slightly, his attention fully locked on her. Your attention to detail is impressive, he remarked, his voice dropping to a register that seemed designed to bypass her ears and go straight to her spine. I appreciate a woman who notices the little things. Was that an innuendo? Kristin couldn't be sure. But the way he said little things definitely carried a suggestion that had nothing to do with design specifications. The little things often make the biggest difference, she heard herself reply, instantly regretting the wording as his eyebrow quirked upward in response. Is that so? He murmured, that damnable half-smile making another appearance. I've always found that size matters less than how you use what you have. Oh God. They were definitely not talking about interior design anymore. Kristin found herself mirroring him, her voice taking on a naturally sultry lilt, her body language shifting. She leaned forward slightly when speaking, maintained eye contact a beat longer than necessary, and caught herself absently twirling a strand of hair around her finger, a gesture so stereotypically flirtatious she would have been embarrassed if she'd had the mental capacity for it. This central atrium, she said, moving to the next slide, is designed to be the heart of the building. Everything flows from here, connecting all departments while maintaining their distinct identities. I like the idea of a heart, Daniel responded, his eyes never leaving hers despite the impressive digital rendering now displayed on the screen. A central force that pumps life through the entire structure. Exactly. Kristin nodded, inexplicably pleased that he understood the concept so intuitively. It's about creating flow, rhythm, a pulse that can be felt throughout the space. Rhythm is essential, Daniel agreed, his voice doing that thing again, that low, resonant thing that seemed to vibrate at exactly the frequency needed to make her stomach flip. Without rhythm, everything falls flat. And the worst part, she wasn't forcing it. It was just happening. She wasn't actively trying to flirt, wasn't calculating her responses, or deliberately trying to be seductive. This wasn't Kyle awkwardly attempting to hit on a woman at a bar. This was Kristin Thompson, apparently hardwired to respond to an attractive man with an ease and confidence that was as alarming as it was effective. The executive office suite, she continued, gesturing to another rendering, offers privacy without isolation. Glass walls that can turn opaque at the touch of a button. Acoustic engineering to ensure conversations remain confidential when needed. Privacy is important, Daniel noted, his fingers absently trailing along the edge of the presentation materials. Though I've always found that a certain degree of exposure can be exhilarating in the right context. Kristin felt her cheeks flush again. Nay. Balance is key, she managed to reply, knowing when to be open and when to maintain boundaries. Boundaries, Daniel repeated, as if testing the word. Necessary, of course, but often most satisfying when they're pushed. Wouldn't you agree? After about 10 minutes of this charged back and forth, Kristin was vaguely aware that her assistant and Daniel's assistant had started exchanging knowing glances. Jason's expression had shifted from professional interest to barely concealed amusement, while Rebecca's perpetual frown had deepened to new depths of disapproval. A significant look passed between them, a wordless communication that seemed to say, "Are we really needed for whatever this is?" Then, without saying much, they both stood up from the table, the movement so synchronized it might have been rehearsed. "Perhaps," Rebecca said, her voice crisp and clinical, "Mr. Carter would like to see the material samples more closely. I can retrieve the additional portfolios from the car." "Excellent idea," Jason agreed with suspicious enthusiasm. "And I should check on the refreshments. We wouldn't want to run out of that special water." Kristin blinked, snapping out of the spell of conversation just in time to see her assistant gathering his things. The fog of whatever bizarre attraction-induced trance she'd been in began to clear as she realized what was happening. "We'll, step out for a bit," Jason said, a little too smoothly, with a knowing look that made Kristin want to crawl under the conference table. "Give you two some space to go over details." The emphasis on details was subtle but unmistakable. Jason might as well have winked and made air quotes. "The finer points of the design will require careful consideration," Rebecca added, her tone so professional it circled back around to suggestive. "I'm sure you both have much to discuss." Kristin opened her mouth to protest, to say that their presence was necessary, that this was a professional meeting that required witnesses, that she absolutely should not be left alone with Daniel Carter, and whatever gravitational pull he seemed to exert on her newfound feminine hormones. But before she could, the door clicked shut, leaving her and Daniel alone. The sudden silence in the room was deafening. The soft hum of the ventilation system seemed impossibly loud, as did the sound of her own heartbeat, which had accelerated to a concerning rate. "Well," Daniel said after a moment, that infuriating half-smile playing at his lips once more, "it seems our teams are quite efficient." Apparently, Kristin replied, trying desperately to recapture her professional demeanor. Though I assure you, this isn't standard Thompson design protocol. A shame, Daniel remarked, leaning back in his chair with casual confidence. I find non-standard protocols often yield the most interesting results. Kristin swallowed hard, trying to ignore how the simple act of him adjusting his position made her acutely aware of the breadth of his shoulders, the elegant line of his throat above his perfectly knotted tie. Shall we continue with the presentation? She suggested, grabbing for the lifeline of professionalism with both hands. I believe we were discussing the executive suite design concepts. Were we? Daniel replied, his eyes never leaving hers. I thought we were discussing boundaries, and when they're worth pushing. Oh God. This was going to be a very long meeting.